How's it going, everybody? Welcome back. It's Carter, classic host, locally sourced. And before we dive in, obviously, if you want to support this channel, you can go to patreon.com/locally sourced or locally sourced nh.substack.com and become a subscriber, help support the channel. Love it when we have that happen because there's no ads, no sponsors, nothing like that. Totally independently run. I like it that way. Editorial independence is a good thing. Moving on from the immediate plug is my guest today. You guys probably know him, been on the channel before. Arya Shams. He is running for New Hampshire House in Hillsborough. He's coming out of Nashua. There's an open seat in that particular primary. Well, general, I guess, at this point. And let's see here. I am losing my grip on reality. But Arya, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I know we've been planning this for a minute, so I'm glad our schedules finally aligned and we're able to make this happen. Love watching your videos too. Think you're doing great work, so I appreciate you having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, okay, let's just talk about like, because obviously there's like a lot of news, and normally with guests, I'd be like dead set on only sticking to like our topics. But since we've made content together before, we probably have some stuff that we want to review and how it impacts New Hampshire. But before we get there, tell people about your individual race and why you chose to run for that seat and what's sort of driving you in that particular campaign.
So I live in Nashua. I'm originally from Pelham, New Hampshire, which is right next door. It's not that far from here. A very conservative town that I grew up in. And Nashua is one of the bigger cities, second biggest city in New Hampshire. And my rep, Laura Talersky, my ward has three reps, right? And Laura
Yep.
Talersky, who is very powerful Dem that's in the state house, who is, I think she's deputy minority leader. She is running for state senate. Don't quote me on that, but she's one of the top few Dems in the house. And she's running for state senate, which is great because she's tough, and we've met a few times, and she's one of my reps, so we've met a few times, and I'm happy for her, and I'm going to be supporting her in that race. And I was approached by Paige Boschman and one or two other NH talkers who let me know that the seat was open and that they thought I'd be a good person to run. So this was never, I don't know if it was ever really in the card, at least not this early to run for office. I was still just getting my feet wet, but I think New Hampshire is a bit of a unique place, and I can say this as someone who's lived in a lot of different places, like on multiple continents in multiple states. I lived in LA for a few years in the late 2010s or whatever. And New Hampshire is a laboratory. This is a laboratory
Yeah.
where what we're seeing slowly, I think what we're testing is community work and community organizing is and excitement, inspiration is much more valuable per dollar. Like the millions of dollars that they're pouring into like big marketplaces like New York City and Chicago, which they might have like a big TV ad place. That money is worthless here. Like if you don't know the
Right.
neighbors here, if you're not organizing on the ground here, we see that has a lot more of an effect. And I think like where I find myself here is that I'm here to shake things up. I'm here to hold people accountable for the decisions they have been making. And I know I have a whole team of like a community of people that are supporting me, and I'm in lockstep with them I think this is just one piece of the puzzle. I'll never say like running for office, like electoral politics is the answer, because I don't think that by itself, I don't think it's controversial to say by itself is going to change this system based on imperialism. But I think every tool in the toolbox is important. It's the least you can. Voting is literally the least thing you can do, and I'm honored to be asked to run for this seat, and see what happens.
Yeah, totally. So what let's talk about your platform a little bit, because obviously, policy in the bag. Um what's like, obviously there's a certain amount of what you're going to be able to do based off of whatever committee you're assigned to, but generally speaking, when you're going to the state house, what kind of issues are you looking to kind of drill down on specifically?
I mean, I think, listen, anyone who's running for anything in New Hampshire that doesn't talk about housing is not doing their due diligence, is not living in the state. You know, like we're all being drowned by some form of housing issue, whether it's property taxes, whether it's rent. Like, I just to give you guys an example, there aren't I'm one of I would be one of the very few renters if I get elected. There's only a handful of us. And again, most people are property owners. The average age is 61 years old in the New Hampshire State House, right? Um, so when I talk about housing, even though housing is by far the most important issue here that needs to be attacked in a variety of ways, that housing is actually also affected by the fact that we have a volunteer government. You know, this is a volunteer government. It's people who have the money or the ability to be in a room that is paying them $100 a year. I know people hate talking about that, especially like the old heads and the OGs of the party and like the state house. And it's like, no, we don't ever talk about our own pay. Like, it's time to
Yeah.
grow up. This is tough. This is hard. This is meant, it's that argument is meant to silence us from talking about it. Like, hey, no, this is civil, like, this is a volunteer government. You don't want to profit off of it. This is how you profit off of it. Make it for zero and then pay them individually to make decisions for you. And that's
Right.
attached to my third biggest issue, which is the Free State Project. And the Free State Project, as it's not just going after, I don't believe in going after individuals, right? I believe in going after systems. And part of this system is that this archaic government structure has allowed it so a bunch of carpetbaggers could come here from other states, bring their ideas that got them kicked out of those states, bring them into this state and say, this freedom. Come and take your money out of your public schools, put them into a private account in New York for freedom education. So little Tommy can go ride his horse in the North Country, right? Like, this is so objectively insane. And no one speaks like the way I'm speaking to you right now. No one speaks like this inside of that state house. Why not? Like, that's the part I don't understand, and that's why I'm running, because like it seems like there's a lot of people that feel the way I feel when and they need someone to say it out loud.
Right. No, absolutely. I'm with you 100% on the Free State Project. That's like a huge issue that I have, and part of the thing that like bothers me so intensely about them is that they have proven very, very well that the electoralism argument and sort of like capturing a party works like very well, especially when you have such a ground level, low barrier to entry set up the way we have in New Hampshire. And my personal opinion on that is I'm like, okay, if they can do it, why can't the progressive left do that? There's the only thing that stands in our way is our propensity to have infighting with each other over meaningless issues. Um, and that's super irritating. And I think, anybody that's watching this that hasn't heard of NH Talk, Arya and I are both sort of part of that community. And I always, you know, in my mind, I think we're in a lot of ways the sort of progressive left wing response to that. Now, I don't want to like broadly characterize everybody in NH Talk like in that community because we do have some former Free State people that have found themselves disillusioned with the movement itself and have joined and because they're like, hey, we want to fight fascists, and we're basically like, hey, welcome to the party, guys. We'll hash it out. I do think your point about housing is and specifically having a renter in the state house is so important. uh for anybody that doesn't know the stat, it's I believe 73.3% of the state are homeowners. So that's almost the just under three quarters of the state are home slash property owners. that means that there's basically, a little over 25% of the state that just is flat ignored. And for people that are renting, they have no equity, right? So they don't necessarily have a way to generate profit or returns based on property that they own. Um, and therefore, they are, when you talk about not paying the legislature, right? That acts as a way to basically filter out all of the lower income people that are trying to have a say or trying to participate in their local government, like their state government. And to me, these issues are sort of all intertwined, right? Like I don't know if that's necessarily a question, but it's sort of like a take to maybe respond to or analyze.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, what that $100 a year does effectively disqualifies any working class person. I mean, and I want people to know, like, I'm not a millionaire running for this seat. I just happen to have time, and I think that's one of the
Yeah.
lucky things. I don't have a partner. I don't have kids. That used to be, I'm not on the same track as a lot of people who are in my generation, and that's okay now. I mean, I've come to grips that this economy sucks. Everything about everything sucks. It's very difficult, and I have to live within the means that I have. And I think this time has afforded me the ability to go and be able to spend some time in that room with those people. And I think, again, it's for me, I'm lucky I have, I have a family business, and I have family that can help with some hours here and there. But like most people, they don't have that. They're not like, they don't have the extra time. The extra time they need to put towards like raising their kids. I don't know, like other things that
Right.
adults have to do that I don't have to do at the moment. And so, yes, there's a minority of us in there. And what happens essentially, which again, I don't want people to think that like we're trying to pay out like Congress level numbers. Like, Congress gets paid like 200 grand a year. Okay. Like, I'm not trying to pay the state house that. But if you look at like just even state, like the most, red states, they believe that public service needs some type of like livable wage because it's not a volunteer job. The reason why New Hampshire is drowning is that this place is becoming a billionaire's wonderland. Most of, and even the property owners, I'm sure it's the number of property owners, like in human being numbers, is like much lower than the 73%. It's like multiple buildings
Right.
that they own, right? Multiple houses, third, fourth houses. I think what happens is, again, if you don't pay them or if you don't do something for them, there's no childcare, like at the very least. Okay, and childcare is going to be a big part of what I do too. I'm going to be a childless childcare pusher here because I need people like me to step up to the plate and understand that like community means taking care of other people's kids too. Those are your kids as well. A healthy society has people taking care of each other's kids. I don't have kids. Why can't I care about your kids? And I need some of the women, for example, in NH talk. I need some of them in that room. Like
Yeah.
like they are seriously like some of the most inspiring people that I've met on this journey because they are raising kids, they are doing the family thing. Some of them are single moms. They're still showing up to these things. To do that, you have to care. Like it's a requirement. There's nothing else motivating you in that moment. And that's exactly what's happening in the state house. Again, 61 years old. That's the average age of the state house. Average age of New Hampshire is 43. It's a
Right.
nursing home that can adjust our taxes. That's it. They're not they How do they know what my life is? How do they know what our lives are like? They have no idea, you know?
Yeah, totally. No, I completely agree. And I mean, I think I was talking to a friend recently, and I was sort of explaining the issue of how this works. My friend's not from New Hampshire's over in Pennsylvania. And the issue was, I was like, look, like when you don't pay your representatives, right? He's like, it creates this weird system where only the people can afford to go. And he's like, okay, well, it's tell me more about it. And I was like, well, look, like, he was like, he asked me, he's like, well, what do they get out of it? And I was like, well, look, if you're making a whole bunch of passive income because you own stocks, right? You have stocks and you get interest off those stocks, and that's how you create your sort of liquid funds. Um, if you don't really care about only making $100 a year when you have just disposable time out the wazoo, because you can go to the state house and then adjust laws in a way that saves you money from whatever passive income stream you have. So, in a way, you are able to pay yourself even more by taking no money from the state. And I think that's a dynamic that people maybe don't necessarily wrap their head all the way around, and it's pretty grotesque in my opinion.
It's a really it's a really easy messaging strategy to people who are not willing to. It's like, well, and again, even the paying part, right? It's that can be played with, that can be messaged with. That's how I know that, like, it hasn't been a priority for the people, even I don't know, even on the Democratic side, I don't think, because it's really easy to message around this, like, we can give tax breaks instead of a payout. We can make it, we can incrementally make it easier for people to serve without paying them, even if we wanted to. But it's
Right.
such a fundamental, again, it's being gate kept, like you said, it's being gate kept by people who do not need the money. So they don't see the need to start paying people. They'll be like, why would you want to pay me? I don't need the money. Don't worry about it. This guy is worth more than 80% of New Hampshire, 90% of New Hampshire. Most of them are, and I think there is, again, it sends the wrong message, I think, too. What job pays you nothing?
Yeah.
Like you're telling me this isn't worth minimum wage? Working
Oh, yeah,
for
right.
state government is not a minimum wage job. What world are we living in? What dimension? And that's the part I don't understand. At least if you're gonna do that, like, you could easily too, like, just chunk off days where they don't need to show up at Concord. The person
Right.
who lives in Concord, the rep in Concord, is getting paid more than the rep in Nashua, if you want to put it like
Yeah.
that. Like, because I just get gas, that's it. But I don't get that time, I don't get the time back.
Right.
So I think, I just think these things are easily messaged if we were actually messaging them. And I think I want people to know there are people like me that aren't millionaires, that are renters, that are just like everyday people I started as a content creator, and I showed up to to organize, and now I'm running for state rep, and people seem to be
Right.
pretty excited, and that makes me excited, and I'm not going to go there to watch a state decline. I'm going in there to bring that kind of brand in there. And really, honestly, Carter, my main goal here, outside of the platforms, I want to demystify the experience. I want to, like, literally, you see me recording content short form all the time. Just bring it into me with record the same stuff, but I'll be in the state house recording it. I'll be like, this is what I did today. And, like, look, it's really not
Yeah.
that hard. We can be hanging out, going to lunch together right now, and then be voting on marijuana legalization, which I am going to put my name on because it is just cosmic if I can. So, but
Ugh.
that's another story.
No, I'm with you. That one makes me so frustrated because it's like, look, my attitude is, when it comes to marijuana legalization, it's like I want to do it purely because of the criminal justice aspects of things, and then the freedom to cultivate aspect of things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, Massachusetts, they've been developing an economy for it for the past decade, right?
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that the Massachusetts marijuana market is like the perfect example of a free market that is working, because there's so much competition that it has driven the prices down so far that it now can cost, even with the taxes added on, it can cost you less to get weed that is like 3-4 times as strong as what you could have gotten back like in the 2010s in on the black market, right? Like it doesn't even compare. So the idea
Absolutely.
that New Hampshire would suddenly be able to catch up without making a serious infrastructure investment where you've got either you're selling weed out of every single state liquor outlet or you're building an adjacent structure that is like the state dispensary, you're not you won't be able to compete because you just simply don't have the proliferation to do so, right? You're not, and it just it's the, and the revenue generated, people always love to be like, oh well, you can pay for school with it, and like you're talking about millions of dollars that are gained in revenue versus like 2.5 billion that you need in order to actually adequately fund education in the state. So it chips away at it, but it doesn't solve the problem. The real issue for me is you don't want to be sending people to jail for something like that. And you don't want to be restricting people's right to just grow a fucking plant in their yard. You know what I mean? Like that's really, to me, that's the core thing. Like if you want to live up to live free or die, then maybe you should let people be free to grow a plant in their yard. Just saying.
No, I think. Listen, I think there's a variety of reasons we want to legalize, right? I think like when I'm using, and I agree with you. Like there are such common sense reasons to legalize, and the criminal justice system is one of them. It seems to be like conservatives, they want to just talk about money, and I feel like what other, I mean, what other better excuse is there? Because I've made videos about this where, listen, I live in Nashua, it's the most southern city in New Hampshire. I can just drive 5 minutes down the road to Tingsboro. And once you enter Tingsboro from Daniel Webster Highway, the first two of the first four buildings are dispensaries. And they're not there for mass residents, you know? Like I'm trying to like
Yeah.
they're not traveling there from central mass to like those, it's all, and it's full of New Hampshire
Oh,
residents are, that's where they're making all their money. And it's just, to me, it's like this is just, we are being robbed. Like it's just, and
yeah.
it's over what? Over what? Everyone is doing it. We're the only state in New England not doing it. And then just look at, like I went to California, obviously for the World Cup, and the prices there are insane. I could not believe how cheap it was from even just a
Right.
few years ago when I was there. I was there like a
Yeah.
few years ago living there in 2020, 2019 before COVID. And I cannot believe how like and strong, the strongest stuff
Yeah.
ever. And I'm just like, I'm cooked out here. Like I don't even know, it's crazy. So I think, I mean, you have it it makes so much sense. And for some reason, part of like what people love about being unique about this state is making the dumbest decisions on planet Earth. Is it they're proud of it, and it's like there's a level of pride in like vetoing cannabis expansion. It's because look at what these woke states are doing. We're not going to do that. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just so crazy to me, dude. I can't understand it. I can't understand it. But
It's real
that's why I'm running ultimately, so I can yell at them
right.
inside of there instead of just at them.
Just be like, stop cutting off your nose to spite your face kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. So, but to messaging, right? So this is something that genuinely I spend time thinking about this, right? We have a progressive caucus in the House. Why are we not seeing better messaging? Why is it that it seems so difficult to get a state rep that's out here willing to say what you're saying? You know what I mean? And obviously you're not there yet, so it's not like you're involved in it or like in the immediate sense. But and I know people will get super upset with me and be like, "Oh, he's attacking the progressive, whatever, is just ridiculous." And look, like I just want the institutions that say that they are what they are to be what they say that they are. You know what I mean? I don't really think that's too much of a stretch. So I'm just like, I mean, I'm curious what your take on that is, and then how you're just willing to go in and be different in that way.
Um, I'm gonna drop a hot take here, or like maybe some hot news that I really haven't told many people, but I do not see myself joining the Progressive Caucus for reasons that we, um, as voters, are probably aware of, and I'm not here to like drop names or any of that, but I
Right.
think my general feeling about this, right? About what you just said, which is like, how are you going to be different? What's going on with the progressives? I feel like that's part of the messaging strategy too, where we're just, it's the tankies and the commies and the socialists and the DSAs and the progressives. And it's like, that's being done to us on purpose.
Yeah.
We're not labeling ourselves. Okay. People are labeling us, and we're taking those labels in. I used to like question myself all the time. I think I probably lean as like a populist, but even that is like, it depends on what day of the week it is. I might be a
Right.
socialist today. I might be a communist tomorrow, or an anarchist, or an accelerationist. Who knows, right?
Right.
These are all things meant to divide us. And this is how I feel about like anyone that labels themselves something, or if they call something like a progressive caucus. the progressives the progressive caucus doesn't get to decide if they're progressive. Okay, like we
Right.
are the ones that decide who's progressive. We're the ones that decide who's actually for something and against. We're the voters. I mean, we're the electorate. That's it. You can call yourself a unicorn for all I care. Like it doesn't matter what you think you are. It matters what your principles are, and those
Mhm.
come out. You give people enough time and enough like rope, you know what they do to themselves with it, right? So to me, it always comes out, and the easiest way to move about this world is with moral clarity. That's my whole brand, which is like I don't I'm not afraid of people calling me stuff anymore. There are literally bombs dropping on babies right now. Don't care what
Right.
you think. Don't really care what you think about me on a daily basis, but I'm going to do what I think is right. And I know what's right. I'm done negotiating on what's right. That's something that I talk to people about a lot, which is like I get a lot of heat for that, but I don't care anymore, because ultimately I have to like live with myself, man. Like
Yeah.
I'm sick of watching all this stuff. The most live stream genocide of our lifetimes. We're still talking about it, right? And to
Yeah.
me, for me, it's so clear now. And my sentiment really is like, everyone get in the bus. Or just get out of the way, because people are sick of purity politics. They want to fight. They know
Right.
what they want, and I want to help them get there. I don't want to like beat around the bush anymore. And if that means not being in the progressive caucus, that's okay. I've been thinking like, what would I do if I get elected? Maybe start my own caucus. Who says I can't do that? Like these
Right.
things are just, to me, I'll work with anyone. And Carter, put me on record here, baby. I want you to hold me accountable to this. I will work with anyone that is willing to make my neighbors' lives better. You quote
Right.
me on that. I will work on
Yeah.
anyone with any party. Label yourself whatever you want. But if you're willing to help my neighbors and you're not a literal Nazi, we're in. Let's do it. Let's go.
Right. Right. No, I mean, I think that's an incredibly well principled position, and one that I would hope most people that are actually trying to support folks that need to just live a dignified life are willing to do. I don't really understand the propensity of elected officials to want to play inside a certain structure that has proven to be completely ineffective for many constituents in the state, when you're talking about whether it's young people or seniors that are just being completely pushed out of the state because they can't afford things. You know, I I don't give even the like 0.5% of a fuck about what your personal drama issues are with some other state rep. It's so irrelevant to me. Like that means nothing to me as a constituent. I think there's a lot of people in New Hampshire that feel the exact same way. And I think there's probably a lot of them that I have major political disagreements with, really, really big ones. But that's just a through line that you just want somebody who's willing to say screw it. If it makes everybody's lives better, let's go for it. You know what I mean? That's generally my attitude. And from what I understand of the way things will work in Concord, and I mean, I know this has happened, I know this has been a thing, and I've heard it from a bunch of different directions, that when you get up to the state house, there's always somebody that's like, oh, well, we're going to take you under our wing and we're really going to show you how all this works. And we're going to walk you through this. And let me introduce you to all these people. And what we want you to do is we want you to sit in the back for a little while and just watch and listen. And then you'll learn how to engage with this space. You'll learn how to operate with this space. Nobody ever stops for a second and goes, maybe that's not the way we should do it, because maybe so many of the problems that we're experiencing are directly precipitant to this institutionalized knowledge, which was formed at a time before anybody that's up there now was ever holding office. Right. So what it does is it forces an ideological passing of the torch over generations of representatives without any accountability for those source ideas, and nobody stopping the process and interrupting it and say, hey, wait a minute, isn't this kind of broken at this point? Shouldn't we maybe try a different way? The Democrats have been losing in Concord for, I think it's like 10 years now or something like that. We haven't had a Democratic governor for so long. And I think there was only one cycle where there was House and Senate majority. So I don't understand. It's like you're trying to convince me of what, how to lose? Like, and that's it?
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's the record so far, and there's nothing wrong with like being honest with people. And I do want to like just clarify for your viewers too that like I'm not saying the progressives are bad people either, or like they're not
Right.
progressive. It's just my general principle, my general sentiment here is that like progressives aren't a monolith either. Like I disagree with progressives on stuff, and I'm probably more left of them. But that being said, I think there is a lot of that what you mentioned, kind of like, I wouldn't call it gatekeeping, but there's a little bit of, this is like this is like my person, this is our person, and he's going to join our group, and he's going to kind of like vote along with us and do this thing. And I do sense some of that a little bit going on with, but listen, I expect that. I have a political mind, and I think like the expectation is that, and I know what people are expecting of me, even like my most ardent naysayers think I will go in there and sell out, because that's what people do.
Right.
And ultimately, right. And that's the way it goes. So I think having that awareness, knowing that if the moral clarity, the moral conviction here is speaking truth to power. And my entire thing is that Democrats, a lot of the time, are the ones that are standing directly in our way, and until we can understand that, like, it's not a monolith in either party, that like some of these parties are chunking into various types of sorry, it's a little bit loud over here, but various types of parties. We have to like, we shouldn't shy away from going into like instead of the one big tent, like we need more tents, right? I genuinely believe in that. I don't like the two-party, no one likes the two-party system, but the two-party system creates a lot of BS, right? It creates situations like we have in Maine. Like, let's be real, that's just happening right now. What we know about Graham Plattner now, if you went back to the primary, it's do I pick sexual assault, or do I pick genocide? There's your two-party system at work, right? But if you had more representation, more of a representative government, like you had multiple parties, again, more tents, not a bigger tent, more tents, and you did something like represent a representative democracy, right? The percentage of votes that you got is the percentage of power you got in the government. We would be getting so much more out of our representatives, out of our governments, and out of life, honestly. But we're stuck
Right.
in this perpetual two-party system, and that we have to constantly remind ourselves of that this is a big game of collusion.
Yeah.
You can't convince me that even again, not all the Democrats, but I know there are Democrats in the New Hampshire State House that are colluding with Republicans on stuff too, because that's what they're doing in the US Congress. It's exactly what they're doing. Okay. So
Yeah.
you can't tell me they're not doing that in New Hampshire too. They're doing it everywhere. And that's another way they tricked us, man. Another way they tricked us is be like, that's a D and that's an R. And they're literally running on, I'm not the R or I'm not the D. It's so asinine. And I think, again, part of my thing, I'm not Malcolm X, dude. I'm not someone who can change the world like this, right? But I want other people to see that they can do something. They can be a change. They can be a difference. They can be a trendsetter, and hopefully I know a lot of good first-time reps that are running that I trained with a little bit, that I spoke to.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully in 2 years, that multiplies and multiplies. And to speak to what you said originally, which is we can do what the Free State did. What the Free State Project did. We can do that. If they did it, we can do it. We just have to run people. And for every one person, like a Zoran Mamdani, right? Like every one of him, we have to run like 100 of us.
Yeah.
We have to run 100 of us until we get a Zoran. So it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I hope this is just a starting point, and I can just put more eyes on this path. That I want other people in there with me. Yeah, I need people in there with me. I need people like you, Carter. I need people like NH Talk people. I need like all kinds of people that just care, right? Because right now there's no teachers in there, no nurses. I mean, there's some, hyperbolic, but it's mostly all just people with money. It's not working class people.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And actually, so it's funny because you bring up Maine, and I think this is actually an interesting moment to kind of like sort of cross the discussion a little bit. So, basically, I'm not. Obviously, people know what's going on, right? If you are seeing this interview when it comes out, you can check the upload date on it. Like, you'll know what the hell was going on when we recorded this. But obviously, you encounter problems with certain candidates. Now, like you casually mentioned, oh, you need somebody like me up there. I'm not going to run for a state rep at all. That's in part because my mother at one point was a state rep. I don't believe in political dynasties, so I cashed that out already. My family, my bloodline, they had their fucking shot. And my mom did pretty good work when she was there, but that's not for me anymore. I exist in a certain lane. The point that I would like to make, though, is that I think there's a danger with putting people like me up, because there's not necessarily the vetting process that goes through it. And people will see me and they'll say like, oh, well, he's a carpenter. He's well-spoken. He's, he fits the working class vibe or whatever. What the fuck just happened with Grant Plattner? In contrast to that, just to finish the thought, in contrast to that, you're an Iranian American. The reason why Abdul al-Sayed or Zoran Mamdani are so excellent is because the barrier to entry for them being candidates on the left in the first place is so much more infinitely challenging. It's so much higher, because you're already encountering the likelihood that you will be terror jacketed. And so you need to be an immaculate candidate out of the gate anyways. You can't have anything like that in your history that you like dog it and well, like, okay, well, it's he made some mistakes. He's like, he's just a little guy. He's just he's an American guy. And it's just like that, like, this is the argument for why non-white candidates should be elevated because there's already an assumption, especially if you're Muslim, especially if you're brown, that you're already cooked. So to know that you're walking into it in the first place means that you likely don't carry the baggage that would be so detestable to everybody, right? Like, no, I don't have anything like that in my history, right? I don't have, I've been married for like a decade and a half, so I don't have those kind of allegations attached to me. But I can see why there would be a lot of suspicion on something like that. Whereas, like, if I wanted to be a candidate, if I really wanted to do that, I would have to put years in with the DSA. You know what I mean? Like, I would have to be doing just straight organizing with them in order to prove my salt. You know what I mean? Like, and I just, I don't, I think that's like an important nuance that people maybe need to be aware of, especially when you're talking about a state that's so fucking white.
I couldn't say it better myself, Carter. I mean, like that is something that again, and everything changed after 9/11, right? Like I
Right.
never felt any different. I never felt like I grew up in a very white town in a very white state. You know, I was hanging out with kids on a daily basis called Jeremy, John, Travis. We were going to pool parties. And then all of a sudden, one day, it's like the media is telling me I'm different, right? I'm much
Right.
different. And that is something that I've had to carry. And yes, and that's another thing of being like weathered online. You get so much, you know, you take so much of a beating online. You kind of grow like a bit of a spine. And I think there is a lot of truth in what you're saying. And I want to say before I say the next part, I want to say unequivocally, I made a video about this. I've made a lot of Graham Plattner videos. Okay,
Yeah.
like not about Graham Plattner, but about his race and about what he represents. It's always been more than Graham Plattner, right? And I unequivocally like condemn like that story is like there are receipts. It's to me, it's not
Yeah.
questionable, right? Like so, and that's my opinion. And when it comes to that, like when it comes to him in that situation, I think we need to be very, very careful as progressives, as leftists, how we navigate this situation, right? Because two things can be true at once, right? Which is the first thing is that this accusation is terrible, needs to be investigated, is totally believable, etc. Right? This is bad. He needs to drop out, right? That's one
Right.
conversation. The other conversation is what happens next,
Yeah.
and no one is talking about that, right? Well, some people are. Some people are. Right now, most people are parading. Like the people that don't seem to really care about like really the gravity of this situation are like, I told you so. You know, the same old people
Yeah.
are like, I told you so. We knew from the
Yeah.
tattoo. We knew from this. We knew from that. That's great, you know. But he wasn't popular for the tattoo, right? He
Right.
wasn't popular for the stories. The same with Trump. Like, I just don't see how people aren't making the parallel here that Graham Plattner is thinking like he hasn't dropped out yet. Most people will drop out instantly, right? He hasn't dropped out
Yeah.
yet because we have given the sign, that we are willing to eat this if we get what we want. And again, we have to be very careful here because all it takes, Carter, all it takes is to just get someone with his platforms that doesn't have a Nazi tattoo, doesn't have a
Right.
sexual assault allegation. His platform is what's popular. That is what won.
Yeah.
He is a system quarterback, bro. Like Graham, and he's a terrible system quarterback at this rate. He's a
Right.
third string system quarterback, and he got pantsed on live TV, right? So my thing is like just get a second string system quarterback, someone that doesn't have that background and someone who won't want to genocide Palestinians. Is it that
Right.
difficult? Are we talking about is that difficult? And this is why this conversation is going to be so difficult to navigate in the coming time because the people who are illegitimately, right, not the people, there are a lot of people negatively affected by this, but there are people who are going to pile on because they're opportunists, and we need to be
Yeah.
very careful about separating these messages because the opportunists are going to say, nah, put in the APAC Zionist, That's the most
Right.
electable person.
Right. That is my biggest fear right now.
Yes. So these two thoughts, it is important, right? And this is what moral clarity means, Carter. It's scary for me all the time to take some of these positions because I'm going to get, again, as a Middle Easterner too, which is just as
Right.
amazing, you know, like how much I've been told I hate women and black people, even though I voted for Kamala. Like it's just a crazy, just a story that is being put on us, and we're gonna have to hold the line again. And I can feel it coming that I'm gonna have to start making nuanced videos, and it's not gonna go well at first. It never really does. But this is what holding the line is. This is what like having moral clarity is. It sucks. It's lonely. But people have to do it. While holding these two thoughts, I have to keep reiterating to people because media comprehension is not great, media literacy.
Yeah.
But I am categorically, I condemn what Plattner did. He should drop out yesterday.
Right.
Okay, like so just so it's not a question, but there is a deeper conversation to be had here that is going to affect all of our lives, and we need to have this conversation in tandem, separately.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I mean, it's generally just, it's my stance. It's the stance of this particular channel that like, there are hard lines you do not cross. Committing like textbook definition rape is one of those fucking things. Sorry. You can't, that's an immediate disqualifier, right? Like, I believe in rehabilitation. I believe in people being able to find a way out of situations, but that does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that you get to fucking hold power, dude. Period. The end. Now, I also like, I want to take it a step further a little bit. Because this is something that I try to explain to people in a very roundabout way. And again, I'm not going to say anything about anybody that's running for any level of office right now, whether it's a state rep or governor or, national office, whatever. It's not relevant. The reason you don't see this with DSA candidates is because those candidates have to go through a separate vetting process that is democratically organized prior to them even getting the nomination. Right? They weren't picked out by an ad agency. They weren't picked out by, just some sort of weird group of nebulous folks. They weren't picked out by a special moneyed interest. Like, they're picked out by a democratic organization that you have to prove yourself within. Right? And then your brethren and siblings within that organization, your comrades, they have to decide that you are worthy of that run. Right? So there are things that are far less damaging than literal sexual assault that are, in my opinion, just as disqualifying. Right? If I hear that somebody says, well, oh, I don't want to support XYZ candidate because they're not like me. They don't share my identity group traits. Right? That's a huge fucking red flag for me. That's an example. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that sketches me out, right? They can have a banger platform and I will probably still support them or vote for them within the context of them having that platform. But if they're like, well, that person doesn't have the same precise lived experience as me, so therefore I can't get behind them. They don't know what it's like to raise a child. They don't know what it's like to have to go and work a 12-hour day over state lines. They don't know what it's like to have to stand on the top of a roof and worry about whether or not their life is in jeopardy and if the Trump supporting coworker that they work with is going to hold that safety line for them or not. You know what I mean? Like, these are all sort of anecdotal examples, but I'm just trying to make a broader point that like that would be for me sort of disqualifying, right? Like, and I think that those type of characteristics, if you are engaged in a organization that requires democratic agreement where you have to show up and you have to do work with these people, any of those traits are going to come out. They're going to be very apparent to folks, like within that organization, and that will act as the filter necessary to prevent those candidates from ever making it to the stage where you could have oppo research drop that all of a sudden just completely kneecaps the campaign and makes an entire movement that coalesced around them because they didn't know any better, because they didn't have the information on hand to be able to make an accurate judgment. It doesn't paint them as idiots or wrong. You know what I mean? So that's just like a general point that I want to impress upon people. That when we say we need better vetting, that is part of the method by which the vetting process occurs, is to be in strong coalition with a group of people. It doesn't even necessarily have to be DSA, but you need to be in a sort of a more democratically or like conversational group of people. If this, like, there's mutual aid organizations that would do this, if serve the same exact function. You know what I mean? Like unions could serve the same exact function, right? It's about proving your worth within a broader coalition that has to make very serious progress on its own right, that earns you that position.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I'm never going to be against democratic values. You know, like the more democracy, the better. The more filtering, the
Yeah,
better. I mean, I think it only helps. I'm for unlimited democracy. You know, and I think there's a form of that. Like, I don't know, and I feel like NH Talk, like, you know, gives a lot of power projection, and you know, for good reason. I mean, I feel like we
right,
organically there's a lot of movement in NH Talk, and I feel like NH Talk is kind of providing a similar, more decentralized version of DSA. And I know NH Talk, again, NH Talk being it's very decentralized, right? We don't have bosses, like no
right.
one pays us, no one tells us. Everything is organic. We all work for different campaigns or in different, you know, volunteers. I'm a you know, candidate, and I think like doing that too, I have found, is a form of vetting. Like I
Yeah,
like being asked to run by your community organizers, or like being supported by the people that you're on the ground with, like people like, you know, Mel, you know, who does such good work.
right,
Like she, like constantly she's working with progressive, she's doing mutual aid on her spare time, she's parenting, she's doing she's running the Discord, the NH Talk Discord. I mean, like
yep,
people like that are inspiring as hell. You know, they're
right,
inspiring as hell. And then when these people are like excited about you, or like are pushing you to run, I think that within itself, there is a vetting process going on there, that is an organic vetting process that is probably worth more to you than, you know, any New Hampshire organization. Let's be honest. Like,
right,
unless you're politically minded, you don't know about a lot of these organizations, and it's not their fault. It's just, it's New Hampshire. You know, like
right,
we're spread out. They're not doing TV. We're not doing TV stuff. It's a purple state. So it's like it's a very interesting breakdown. And it's been a year for me, man. Like I think for me it's just been mind blowing how much I've learned in this year just by showing up. Like
right,
seriously, just by showing up, and showing up in space. And when you're showing up in space, there's something about being with other people, and the hope is so much more powerful than fear, and you feel it when you're with other people. It gets exponential, and then the momentum feels palpable, and all of a sudden you feel like you're the most powerful organization, and that people are looking to have you
right,
in important rooms now, and people are want to have opinions and want to do interviews with you, and like, you know, do the whole shebang. And I just think there's something to be said there too, where it's like, listen, I'm considering the DSA. Let's be real. I'm considering joining the
yeah,
DSA too, because they represent a lot of the values that I share, right? Like and I think having that, or the Democratic Party has shown that it is important to have an organization behind you regardless. They have resources, they have tools, they have things that they can give you that I was told if I don't run as a Dem, there's a certain amount of things that I'm not going to get, you know, like that I have to take care of on my own. And so for that reason, I'm in a blue area. Why wouldn't I run as a Dem? These
right,
decisions should not be made for me that way, right? Like I should have choices. I should have choices to go to a couple different groups, maybe run on my own and still be as viable. And I think that, like, again, the more of these decentralized, or not, as it doesn't have to be decentralized, but the more of these groups that we have that are invested in the process, which we don't have anyone in it. Like no one in NH Talk is like, you know, I don't think anyone's really making endorsements outside of like personal endorsements and stuff, but you can tell what excites the left by what NH Talk posts about, right? I mean, you can really make a direct connection there, and you can meet these people, and then all of a sudden you're running, and all of a sudden you're meeting, and this can be it can be like replicated. Is it like what I ultimately want to say? Is that what we're doing here is not nothing special. It's not special. You know,
Right.
we're meeting with each other. We're going to things. We're going to meetings that are already set. We're not the ones that are creating the meetings. You know, we're bringing more people to these meetings. We're making it more viable for everyday people, for moms, neighbors, whoever.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, I think I do sort of think about the broader NH Talk community as being a more decentralized version of that sort of vetting process. So I think it's, you know, for people that want to participate in that, it's pretty easy to, you know, hop onto a Discord server and just join the chat. And you don't even necessarily have to start chatting. Maybe just sit there and just read it for a little bit, see what people are saying, see what the conversations are like. You know, there's a lot that goes on in there, from very, very real, like, material issues relating to campaigns or policy or mutual aid, to much more theoretical debates that occur about the meaning of ideological, you know, emphasis and whatever. I've been known to get into a few of those myself. But
the best of
it's
us
like,
do.
Yeah, it's true. It really is. But I think it's so important to have those pathways, because challenging the current structure of things is, you know, like, to the point about just the very likely, like, outcome that the Democratic Party will try to shoehorn somebody in that doesn't mimic Graham Plattner's platform one to one is super high. That's just, I'm incredibly suspicious of that. Because that's we have precedent for this. That's what Biden and Harris were in the last election. You know, like, it is a nightmare for me. It is an absolute nightmare for me, because I'm just like, they're gonna do it again, dude. They're gonna do it. Like, what? It's right there. It's right fucking there. And I stress about this because, to your point, it's like, New Hampshire is like a testing ground, right? And we're very microcosmic of the broader national situation, in large part because of the way that our government is set up. So there's and I think the libertarians are doing what they can to prove that case, right? Because they're trying to look at it as sort of microcosmic in that sense, and then export the ideas outward, right? Like, granted, it was the most miserable face plant into a pile of horseshit that I've ever seen in my life. But Jeremy Kauffman did try to do exactly that when we went to the Libertarian National Convention, and tried to, like, basically, like, disassemble the entire party. At which point they were just like, no, we're just going to kick you and your particular state out. So weirdly good on the Libertarian Party. I can't believe I'm fucking saying that, but, like, good on the National Libertarian Party for doing that. That was hilarious. And those of us that don't support the Free State movement in New Hampshire were absolutely cackling from home. Super, super funny. Appreciated it. But I do just, like, I always come back to, like, all of the worst ideas that you see in the United States get trial runs in New Hampshire. Like, that is
For
just
sure.
a thing that happens here. And so that's why it's like, even though this isn't like a nationally oriented channel per se, I always want people to be like, maybe it's worth paying attention to every once in a while, just because of the, you know, I think the school voucher program is a fucking incredible example of this. You know, like, the Trump administration, Linda McMahon, they look at what's going on here in New Hampshire, like, how can we upscale that? Right? How can we take this idea and basically disseminate it to the nation at large? that decentralization and de-emphasis on government is so strong here. And they're like, well, it's the first in the nation state, and they really, they get their name out there pretty hard. And if we can just do these trial runs, then maybe, just maybe, we can export it to the whole rest of the country. And it's terrifying.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think there's this weird thing that's going to happen here. I think in the next month. I think these like the September 8th, the late primary, we have that late primary for some of these races. And I think that's going to help some of these races in New Hampshire, because all this focus is being put on these different states. And we know the Democrats are kind of scared here for Pappas, because they're talking about, Chuck Schumer, like possibly coming out here and talking at some rallies or whatever. And like even at some meetings. And that would be just, there's an opportunity coming here is basically what I want to say for anyone on the left, anyone who's looking for hope. And again, I could be wrong. Anything can happen between now and September, but just, looking at the political, the waves going on politically. And again, just thinking about what's happening in New Hampshire, people are getting, like, the Free State Project is becoming a popular talking point for a lot of people in New Hampshire, a lot more than I've ever remembered. I mean, even me, I had heard about the Free State movement only like a year ago. But since then, I mean, and some of my most highly watched content has Free State Project notices it. So it's like, it's a very highly micro focused thing here. And I think that's another unifying thing that can be done with the progressives, along with, again, fighting the ops in our party. Because I ultimately, like, to bring this back to the Plattner thing, and again, I want to name drop our own progressive reps here that are running, that are all, whether it's Paige running against Maggie, Karishma running against Pappas, or Heath, who is leading all the progressives against the field. There's something to be said here about the platform versus the person, right? It's becoming so obvious, right, through everything that happened with Graham Plattner and what's happening now, right, is that there is a decision to be made here for all of y'all, which is like, how far are you willing to take what's happening in Gaza? How far are you? Because listen, maybe that wasn't the entire issue in 2024. That is most of the issue today. That everything is, and if it's not, everything is related to it. The tendrils are everywhere, whether it's affordability. I mean, again, if you are pro-ICE, you are pro-Israel. There is correlations everywhere regarding that, including in the Democratic Party. And it's important as messengers that we start clarifying to people that it's not enough to have a D in front of your name anymore. It's not. And again, people are going to come at me. I'm not going to have these conversations about vote blue no matter who, which I think is the greatest Zionist propaganda that has ever worked in this country. Vote blue no matter who. That's my opinion, and that might be a hot take. But I think generally here, when we're talking about the money that is involved here, it is constantly on the morally abject, the negative moral space here. And we know what's right. Bombing babies out of existence isn't right. It's not right. And to behave like it's a negotiation, to behave like it's a debate, is wrong within itself. And our Democratic representatives, big D representatives, have been voting in lockstep with these monsters. And we shouldn't be ashamed of saying those things, because it's important for what lies ahead, like the future Plattner conversations. How far are you willing to take this? Because at a certain point, if Graham Plattner doesn't drop out, I know everyone thinks he's going to drop out, but if he doesn't drop out, that's the decision Mainers are going to have to make. Which hell are you willing to walk into here? And I just, it doesn't get much worse than that. It doesn't get much more of a a shit sandwich versus turd nugget than that, or whatever that, the analogy is.
Yeah.
It's like the worst
Yeah.
possible thing that could happen. So
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to your point too, like, I think, I think part of the reason, I think a huge part of the reason, maybe the biggest part of the reason why uh, Israel and what they've done in Gaza, what they've done in Lebanon, all the reason why that's so intense for people is because I think folks are finally starting to connect the dots on the military spend, right? The amount of money that we sink into the NDAA every single fucking year. And the fact that they don't have health insurance, the fact that they watched the war with Iran put their gas prices into the fucking sun, right? Like, people are now starting to actually create a legitimate correlation between the overemphasis on uh, military funding and them not having just basic fucking provisions.
agreed. Absolutely.
And to me, I think it's at that point people do start to actually understand, like, oh, these are all the same problem, right? Having like endless wars and having no health care are the same fucking problem. They're directly tied to each other because a significant portion of the money that we, like, in fact, all of it, right? If we just de-emphasize, you cut, like, I don't know, 75% of our emphasis on, doing global power Pax Americana bullshit, and you're just like, yeah, we're going to invest it locally. You know what I mean? And I understand that there's sort of a danger in saying, like, down with Israel because America first, right? You're sort of leaning into like a MAGA line. But it's not about trying to be conservative. It's just about being like, hey, can we stop spending all of this money on things that don't benefit anybody other than defense contractors, right? It's just it's not it's starting to click for people, and I think that's why there's a significant amount of sort of cross-partisan support, or lack of support, as the case may be, for the continued support to Israel.
No, I mean, spot on and spot on. And the real danger of it continuing the way it is that it's going to be people who have like very real gripes against Israel with the anti-Semites. I mean, it's ultimately that's you're going to force yourself into that pigeonhole because you're not dealing with what's at stake here. You're not dealing with the issue at hand. You keep pathologizing the voters. You keep pretending like it's something else. Like, hey, they're all anti-Semitic. They just hate Israel. And the more you don't deal with that, the more people start wondering if they're more like Tucker Carlson than they originally thought. And these are the questions, like, I'm seeing this in real time, man. Like my dad he's liberal. He's a lib, like he's not I wouldn't call him a leftist or a progressive. He's a lib. I mean, he is. I mean, Obama's his favorite president, like the whole shebang. So like we have these conversations and he talks to me every day more and more about Tucker Carlson. He's like, Tucker Carlson said this. Tucker Carlson said that. I'm like, Dad, Tucker Carlson's an actual anti-Semite. And he's like,
Yeah.
why do I'm starting to agree with him. I'm like, I think he's agreeing with you, but I'm like explaining to him how this becomes problematic, right? You are now being flanked by Tucker Carlson on the moral subject of Israel. Tucker Carlson
Right.
has the moral flank on you. And Nicholas Fuentes, to a certain extent, seems to be a little bit
Yeah.
harsher on Israel than you for obvious reasons. But people don't get it. They're just saying, like, this is the only, it's kind of like the Iran effect. I tell people, like, people don't understand the nuance of the situation. They see Iran, the IRGC, as the only openly rebelling country against Israel. They see them as the only ones that are putting up any type of resistance, and they automatically think, if I root for Iran, I'm anti-imperial, I'm anti-Zionist. And no, you're not. You're rooting for an Islamic theocracy. And it's not because it's Islamic. If it was an evangelical theocracy, it would suck just as bad, We don't like theocracies, no matter what they are. This is a principle. I'm not into theocracies, you know, like, let's get it out of here. But that's the problem now. Now I have to deal with a whole bunch of Iranians that are, you know, softening up to the IRGC now. They're softening up to the government because, well, they're getting bombed. They're getting bombed. So like they're scared now. Like Iranians have never seen bombing in their country, you know? So it's like, this is, for them, it's like all this talk, it's not talk anymore, it's real. And you've created a whole generation of people who are sympathetic to the IRGC now. And it's the same thing. Like you're going to create anti-Semitism and it's going to be rampant. It's going to be worse than this because you're not dealing with the issue at hand here, which is the genocide, the apartheid state. You know, conflating these two things is just problematic for Jewish people worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I mean, and that's like the thing that always drives me just batshit insane about the sort of the pro-Israel stance of conflating Israel and Jews is that like my reading on that is I'm like, that's literally anti-Semitic. That is because
the definition.
Yeah, exactly. Is like you're demanding that Jews are unsafe anywhere but Israel, despite the fact that Israel, as a tiny nation, you know, like the size of New Jersey, like it's like, dude, yeah, but they've painted the worst fucking target on their back, right? Like. Yep. How many Jews in New York had rockets launched at them? How many Jews in New York died by missile attack within the past, I don't know, decade? I can't think of a single one. How many can you say in Israel? Not the same, right?
Yeah, it's not the same, no, for sure.
Right. That's just simply not the case. So the assertion that Jews are somehow safer in Israel is wrong. That's just factually incorrect if you just look at by the numbers. And then to make the assertion that it's Jews are not safe anywhere, it's like, okay, so what you're doing is you are perpetuating the notion that the entire rest of the world is anti-Semitic, and therefore what you need is you need everybody in Israel, you need all the Jews in Israel so that they can fight back against all the anti-Semites, which means that Israel is in a constant state of conflict.
Yep.
Right. Which is if they are in a constant state of conflict, then they are perpetuating conflict in other places, which is going to make those other places identify Israel as an enemy. And then they will conflate Jews and Israel. And they're not the same thing. And that terrifies me because if you create a conflation between Jews and Israel and you all of a sudden make every single Jew on the global stage Israeli and everybody hates Israel, then you are fomenting anti-Semitism everywhere but Israel. And that brings it to fruition. And it upsets me so much because I have a bunch of Jewish friends, and I'm just like, I don't want anybody to hate them because they're normal people. They're really good people. They do really good things. Yeah. Like it sickens me.
There's a lot of Jewish people in the front lines of the pro-Palestinian rallies, man. Like, you know, like this is why like it's important to constantly remind people that like Jewish people aren't a monolith. Americans aren't a monolith. Iranians aren't a monolith. Like, and to treat them that way, that is anti-Semitic. And I always use one. I have nothing to add to what you just said, by the way. You just said it perfectly. But like one line that I like to use with people is that like, think of it like, I mean, like the government of Israel is telling you they're bombing babies out of existence because they're Jews, and they're getting mad that people are believing them. And this is the problem, right? You say it enough, if you say it enough, like, hey, it's because we're Jewish, that's why we're bombing them. It's because we're Jewish, that's why we're bombing them. It's for our Jewish heritage, it's for being Jewish. People will start believing you. People will look at that and be like, hey, they're telling us it's because they're Jewish. And they're still going. So like, I guess it's true because no one else is disputing that. There's no other Israelis disputing that. There's no American government official disputing that. They're actually perpetrating the same thing. They're saying, yeah, actually it's because they're a Jewish homeland, because they want to be that's the other thing. Like y'all are describing an ethno-nationalist state. like what you want Israel to be. You want it to be an ethnocracy. I mean, that's ultimately where, like, you know, you want it to be Germany in the Nazi era. That's what it was. It was an ethno state. Like, at what point were we like describing it, ethno states as like a goal? You know, and I think again that's the messaging. The messaging is the problem here, that like there aren't enough people yelling from the mountaintops like, this is not the same thing. It's actually, people are getting so exhausted by this that they're just like, fuck it, I'll go listen to Nicholas Fuentes. At least he's giving me something on Israel, you know. Like, it's just so, it's crazy, it's insane.
Yeah, I'm always like,
and
when
just
people...
to put a bow on that really quick.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting to say this, you know. It's just, when it comes to, and again, this is how it comes back to every progressive versus establishment battle in this country, right? It all comes back to this. You can make it about anything you want. You can make it about Nazi tattoos. You can make it about sexual assault. You can make it about harassment. You can pathologize the voters as much as you want. But if you don't deal with the underlying issues, you're just going to keep getting the same results. The underlying issue here is like, stop genocide, affordability. You can't say, you know what, you're voting for Plattner because you are a Nazi. You're voting for Plattner because you hate black people. You're voting for Plattner because you like Palestinians more than you like black people. That's not going to work. It doesn't work anymore. You know, like, people show up for platforms. They didn't show up for Graham Plattner. And that's the one thing that I want to make clear. As much of a fucking monster as that guy is, they weren't showing up because he's a monster, right? Like, that's what the argument people are making, that are like piling on that, like, you know, Mainers are inherently monsters too because they voted for him. No, it's because he's the only one providing them what they want, and they'll take it from whoever. They'll take it from the boogeyman, or they'll take it from the Dalai Lama. It depends on who you want the messenger to be. Do you want it to be the boogeyman? Because the boogeyman will give it to them. Nicholas Fuentes and Tucker Carlson are waiting in the wings. The boogeymen are not fake. They are here and waiting, you know? So it's your choice. Who do you want to have it? And it's my belief that this establishment, when I say establishment, I have to always clarify, because there are people get pissed off thinking I'm talking about them. I'm talking about the people who are making the decisions at the top: Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, Hakeem Jeffries, the money, right? They're not, they don't give a shit if they lose every race. They don't. As long as they hold the power, the keys of the Democratic Party, because they're getting funded by the same source that's funding the Republicans. They just want the bag.
Right.
And it's becoming so clear that they would rather lose with AIPAC candidates than win with progressives. And I think that's something we have to come to grips with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you know, like, there's a couple points, you know, like, one thing I always love is when people bring up the whole ethno-state thing. I'm like, hey, why don't you go ask Japan with their declining birth rates how wonderful an ethno-state has been working out for them. But like, and I think there's like, you know, I think there's a lot of value in us discussing Maine specifically, because lately I've been thinking, just generally speaking, about how I want to actually take, like, I know a pretty decent amount about New Hampshire, right? It's like what I've lived here for like the vast majority of my life. I'm going to take a bunch of time to learn more about Vermont and Maine. We're going to start with Vermont and Maine, mainly because I want to be able to talk about New England as a region, right? I don't want to be 100% forever locked into just New Hampshire. I think being able to discuss the interstate relationships is important, because we are a region, and there is a certain amount of sort of like ethnic homogeneity, especially between Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine specifically. It gets a little bit different when you go down to Massachusetts and Rhode Island and Connecticut, but New England as a region itself is basically cleaved off from the entire rest of the country by New York, right? We're just, that's how that is, you know. Like the only other option we got is Canada, and Canada's like, dude, we don't want to fuck with you guys anymore. Ask Laconia Bike Week how that went for them. So, you know, it's like there's value in being able to discuss sort of the relationships and political dynamics that occur between the three states that make up northern New England. And I think that there's like generally speaking, a lot of people forget just how like conservative all three of those states are, especially Vermont, dude. People really get twisted up. Like a lot of people are like very aware. They're like, oh yeah, there's the seacoast in Maine, and then the entire rest of it is like really, really drunk rednecks. You know what I mean? Like that's like the general assertion of Maine. It's like, what's a really Maine gift that I can give someone? They're like a bottle of whiskey and a fucking carton of cigarettes. That's a really
That's
Maine
so
gift. You know what
funny,
I mean?
dude.
Like, and it's like, and I don't think, look, like I'm not saying that as a slag on Maine, right? Like I hear you guys. I want you guys to do better. Holy shit! Like I really, really coming from the Florida of the North. You know what I mean? Like I want better for you guys, just like I want better for us. You know what I mean? And like I had an interesting interaction when I went and visited some family in Vermont over the weekend, and we were out getting dinner, and there was a server that was like, he was like, oh well, you guys from around here, where are you from? And we are like, oh well, we're actually from New Hampshire. He's like, stay away. You know what I mean? And I was just like, dude, like why would you say that? Like you don't understand that like you guys have a Republican governor too, right? Like you guys are dealing with very similar problems. That was in Brattleboro, right? And people forget that Brattleboro went through their entire like defund the police thing, and now they're having serious problems in Brattleboro, right? The things that are not very like people aren't quite as aware of. And I mean, like I would actually recommend that people go check out my co-host from Thursdays, Kyle. He does a bunch of content about Brattleboro, and he actually has like some pretty serious stuff that he gets into with dynamics between right-wing people over there. But anyways, I'm sort of like getting myself off track.
Very good.
Realistically, I think the point more so is that like this is a region that experiences a degree of homogeneity that does not consider the degree to which that homogeneity hamstrings us. And I think there's a lot of sort of untapped potential in terms of progressive values throughout Maine, throughout New Hampshire, and then it's a bit more present in Vermont, right? But if there is better organization between these states, right? Vermont has a serious lack of hospital options, right? There's a lot of parts of Vermont where you have to travel 20, 30, 40 minutes just to get to an emergency room. That's fucking scary, dude. The amount of people that live in Vermont right next to Lebanon just so that they have access to Dartmouth Hitchcock is like, that's bad. That's really fucking bad. So like there's support. We deal with energy interconnectivity. You know what I mean? Previous interview on the channel is Sam Evans Brown, right? New England, there's a lot of energy needs that are ubiquitous throughout. And I'm sitting down watching the Republican debate between Sununu and Brown. And they're like, yeah, we need to solve more energy problems, but I promise you we won't put a single windmill out in off the coast of New Hampshire. And I'm like, so you just said you want more energy, but you're fucking denying wind power? Like, what the fuck is wrong with your brain, dude? Like, you can't have it both ways, right? So there needs to be like a serious reanalysis of all of this bullshit.
I completely agree. I mean, that regional. I mean, it got me like when people were talking about like balkanization for a while, like with the Trump, like it got me thinking a lot about like regional. You know, how do we? Because listen, I talk a lot. I do have a lot of mutuals in Maine that have come from these progressive kind of conversations and like events, and they're very much like us, you know, like and they wanted our advice. You know, I think there was one time like they were chatting with me and Marissa about you know, how we dealt with like kind of the ice warehouse thing, and because there was a possibility that was coming there, and we told them, you know, nothing secretive or anything. It was just we talked about it a lot. We talked about it over and over and over again. We just kept talking about it, and I think one of these things too, we are having an effect on Vermont and Maine as well. Like not just Maine, I told that story, but a couple people that have reached out to us from Vermont talking about, you know, teaming up too. And I think when it comes to New England, it is very important. Those conversations are very important. I don't have much to add to what you said. I haven't thought much about, but the truth of the matter is like with the hospital deserts and like the food deserts, that's not something that like individual states, when it comes to states like Vermont and New Hampshire, they shouldn't have to stress about that on their own. It does make a lot of sense for a lot of these regional states to work together, like to have a couple hospitals along the, New Hampshire, Vermont border, like whatever the logistic is there. But we don't ultimately customers are still good too for these multiple hospitals, and really going back to the whole idea right now, it seems like our establishment Dems are coming away from Medicare for all and Medicaid. And I think we need to start, again, talking about that more, because that's what's going to drive more hospitals to getting a lot of us, again, getting back to this idea where I don't know how we're going to fix it after Maha. It's going to take a minute, but getting back into checking your, not reacting. Like as Americans, we react to diagnosis. With diagnoses, we don't go to the doctors ahead of time because it's expensive. Right. we don't, a lot of people don't get physicals. The amount of people I know that don't get physicals by like a doctor, and listen, I get it, and because in this fucking in this economy, but that is so detrimental to we have a very low life expectancy versus a lot of these other like not first world countries, but these global north countries or whatever we're calling it, these expensive countries. And I think it's becoming palpable. Like I can feel it. Like, bro, like we are in the richest country in the world, dude. Like, well, how is it that we're all suffering like this? Like, who's doing well right now? Like I don't know anyone that's doing well in terms of like, unless you are like directly profiting off of war and oil and all that stuff, insider trading, whatever. It's just no one is doing well. And I don't know how long that's going to be before something happens, because it's not sustainable. Like this is not sustainable, the way wealth is just being extracted out of the system through pure corruption. I mean, they're not even like screwing around anymore. Like I think they insider traded over Iran like 15 times, like 15 different times. Trump came out and was like, we're working on a ceasefire. And like they insider traded off that, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, Iran attacked us. We're back at it." At that point, it's just like it is so brazen. It's like just a run on the banks, and that's why I think, like sometimes I think I don't know if this is going to be a solution. Like it's going to get worse before it gets better, and sometimes I wonder if it's just going to overnight, like we're going to hear that the bubble burst, the AI bubble burst, something burst, because how is this the corruption like this? The system can't uphold this level of corruption. It's gonna usually they give us enough to like not riot, but I don't think that's gonna happen this time. They would rather round us up and throw us in prison than to like give us more. So we'll see. I hate to say that out loud. I mean, I wouldn't normally say that to people, but I'm working with hope right now. But if we are not bringing the same energy that these people are bringing to eliminating us, whether it's through lack of Medicaid, lack of SNAP, or actually literally eliminating us, I think it's going to be tough. And they responding to strength. That's the main thing. And we know what's right. Yeah, there's a level of like knowing what's right and standing 10 toes down on what you know is right, I think is going to be more important than your political experience. Like,
yeah,
how goes down are you gonna go?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, look, like the AI thing, that's not unreasonable. The actual Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury are talking right now about how they are concerned about an AI bubble. And meanwhile, I'm literally seeing legislation that's, I mean, granted, I voted inexpedient to legislate, but it's like I've seen legislation go through the NH House, which is like, oh yeah, we want to create legislation that actually makes these data centers more appealing to plant in New Hampshire, because we'll demand that they operate on clean energy, and we'll do we'll have a certain minimum jobs guarantee or whatever. And I'm like, at what cost? At what cost? Like, don't try to bootstrap jobs and energy reforms on planting data centers in the state, right? And I mean, like, now granted, I have difference of opinion when it comes to like, well, what kind of data center are you talking about? Are you filling it with hard drives, or are you filling it with GPUs? Those are two very different things, right?
Sure.
Like, if you're filling it with for like you're doing it for like cloud storage, I'm like, I care a little bit less, right? I'm not as worried about that kind of thing because like it doesn't have the same energy draw, it doesn't have the same cooling costs, it doesn't like there's all this different systems, the same noise problems, whatever. But like the whole point of a data center is to once it exists, like you're talking about skeleton crew that runs that thing, right? So
Mhm.
how are you going to demand minimum jobs from that, right? You know what I mean? Freaks me out that the amount of union support for the construction of data centers exists because they're like, yeah, but it's jobs for us to build it. And I'm like, yeah, but what happens when the contract runs out, guys? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that job's going to go away. If you're union, you totally understand that there is a lifetime on the job that you work. There's a few jobs that will exist within union structures that are sort of like they exist in perpetuity, right? But a lot of union jobs are contract based and don't necessarily remain for the extended period of time, especially when you're talking about trades. And I know this because I do them, right? So it's
Sure.
just like it's not a good plan. And I don't think that trying to tie jobs and energy at the same time as you're saying, well, we're going to permit these data centers from working, it feels very omnibus to me. You know what I mean? In this sense, like, oh, we'll just jam it down everybody's throat with this massive, bill that has a whole bunch of, political horse trading that goes into making it happen in order to shove it through, and then we can say, oh well, look, it was bipartisan, and we did, we crossed the aisle and shook hands with our opposition in order to make it
Mhm.
happen. And I'm just like, brother, shut the fuck up! You just screwed us. Like, what are you talking about? Like, take the time to get each individual piece right and then figure out a way to anytime you want to work with something new deal with the complicated system that is required in order to manage the insanely complex world that we live in today. You know what I mean? Like, and that requires a lot of learning, which is something apparently that elected officials don't want to fucking do. I don't. Yeah, I don't know what to do with that. You know what I mean? Like I don't really know what to do with that. It's mostly seems like it's an ego thing most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's some of that. I think I think it's also moving on from the people who are being paid not to listen, and to the
Right.
people who are willing to learn. Because I find that like I'm finding more and more that there is people out there that are hungry to learn. They just need someone they trust to learn it from. I think the biggest problem is like who do we trust, man? Who do we trust?
Yeah.
Can't trust Democrats. Can't trust content creators. Can't trust either of can't trust Republicans. Can't. Who do we trust? And like my whole thing now is like I'm trying to build like a kind of like a trusted brand, a brand where you could not like me, okay? Like I'm okay with that. Yeah, there are going to be people who do not like me, even allies. There are going to be a lot of allies that don't like me because of my tone and the way I go about things, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But there are also going to be people who are being paid not to like me, right? They're being incentivized not to like me, and I'm trying to spend as little time on those people as possible because they're being incentivized not to like me. But there are so many what do you call it? They call like the vote, like the swing voters, like in terms of like people
Yeah.
who are like just hungry for information and don't know where to go to get that information. um I find myself in that situation too when it comes to certain news things or topics where I'm not too well read about, which is it happens. And there are people that I trust, like the gospel, I trust what they say on it. And one day, if they're wrong, I'll deal with that. But how else am I supposed to go about this world? Because again, like we're dealing with people who on a daily basis like to tell you they're constitutional law lawyers. They'll argue FIFA laws with you, bylaws with you. They'll argue, birthright citizenship. They'll argue they knew exactly what the founding fathers in the 1700s knew. They will literally argue that with you in the comments, and wasting your time on them is what they want you to do. I'm trying more and more, and I'm just not built for this. So I'm trying to train myself to not like talk to the trolls all the time too. But there are people out there who are hungry to know more, and they need to get it, or they want to get it from people they trust. To a lack of a better phrase, they want to be told what to think sometimes. And if you are okay with that reality, that there are some people out there that are just willing to listen to, there's a lot of power in that. And the people that have been using that power have been all this time using it for bad. So try to be one of those people, an ethical propagandist. That's what I always say. There is ethical propaganda out there, and we can all be good at it. Republicans literally pay people six figures to sit in rooms and decide how to come up with words like trickle down effect. There's literally a job field out there for people to come up with words like woke. Woke existed, but to bury the word, like, again, these are all things that have been play tested by professionals, like people that get a lot of money, and it works. And we need to fight back with the same type of, the same type of argument. So
Yeah, totally. No, I'm completely with you on it, dude.
you muted.
Am I muted? I was muted. That happened.
Cool,
that was
cool,
a
cool.
real thing that
I was like, oh
happened.
God,
No,
did I
no,
screw
we're good.
something up? Holy shit.
No, I was muted. I usually try really hard to not let that happen. But yeah, so that was I'm with you 100%. And I think that was like, I like the way you think, man. I like the
That's
cut
the
of
way
your
you
jib.
think,
You know
bro.
what I mean? Yes, it's good stuff.
For
So
sure.
okay,
Like even this conversation, Carter. Like I know that this is like I know we talk outside of here. We work together. We're
right,
colleagues. We're friends. I think like these conversations are important for people to see, because there are people that think a lot like we do, man. Like there's a lot of people out there that think like we do, and they're in these red pockets. They're isolated on the internet. The algorithms are telling them the wrong things, and they haven't seen people that look like either of us. Let's be honest, that look
right.
like either of us, that talk about the things that we talk about, like the progressive issues and the leftist issues and things that are really important, right? Like this is,
Yeah,
we can cultivate that to ourselves. And I think we are. I mean, we're trying, like it's the least we could do. So, and I think we're on the
trying
right
our
track. And I'm
damnedest,
happy to have you on the team, bro. Like I'm happy to be on the same team
dude.
as you. I'm very happy about that.
I appreciate it greatly. So okay, like man, for anybody, I mean, like the likelihood that somebody's watching this, they don't know how to find you is preposterous to me. But where can people find you if they don't already know?
Really easy. It's Arya, Arya, for the number NH. I also have a backup, which is Arya, Arya, for FORNH. You can find me on all the websites, mostly on Instagram and TikTok, but I'm also on Facebook. And I have a website, arya4nh.com. That should be completed by hopefully tomorrow, this weekend, I imagine will be
Nice.
done. And that's like my campaign website. But you can find me anywhere there. Contact me, follow me, and I'm really available. I do, like, if you're trolling me, I won't answer. But if you got a question, you want to talk, like I see my DMs. I check my DMs, and I'll answer anything you got anytime you want to chat.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really recommend people check Arya's stuff out, because he, as we were talking about this before we went on, and it came up a little bit, but he just went out to LA for the World Cup and was really there and dealing with it. And there's a lot of good content that he made while he was out there. It can help expand your brain and your mind a little bit on some of the issues. And you've done a lot of really good talking about what's happening in Iran as an Iranian American. And I think that's really important that people hear it from the source. I don't want to sit here and be dictating to folks what they should think or interpret about what's happening in Iran, when I'm like, dude, I'm a fucking white guy from New Hampshire. Like, why don't you go find out from an actual Iranian? You know what I mean? Maybe that's a good idea. So, and especially one that has the academic rigor to back up what they're saying that you do, because it's not only do you have that lived experience, but you also have the academic context to be able to speak on it. And I think that's really important.
I appreciate that big time. And the only thing I would say is that, like, the struggle Iranians face is no different than everyday Americans, right? Like, none of us are free until we're all free. And I think that's part of what I want to do, is that, like, show people that there's nuance. There's always nuance. And it's the same things can be applied to Americans. It's nothing special. It's just another shade, for lack of a better word. It's another, like, that's a little bit too literal, I guess. It's just a different type of book. right? It's a different like topic, but it's the same idea, man. You know, they like if I'm being straight up, it's like both governments are shooting at their citizens. Like,
Right.
how much more of a parallel do you need? So,
Yeah, exactly. Arya, thank you so much for coming on today. This was a
Carter,
really delightful conversation. I feel like it could go for so much longer, but you know,
yeah,
it's just,
seriously, we'll do it again sometime
yeah,
for sure.
absolutely, man. Looking forward to it.
All right,
All
brother.
right. And
Later.
that does it for the show today. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is always a pleasure to talk with the homeboy. So as usual, said at the top of the show, but you can like, subscribe. If you want to support, go to Patreon, hit that shit up. Go to Substack, locally sourced, nh.substack.com. Links in the description. We'll catch you guys later. Enjoy yourselves. Take care.